This episode was brought to you by Big Moose. Find out about the 1 Million Project at bigmoosecharity.co. Pals, greetings and welcome to another episode of Everything Endurance. It is, as always, a pleasure to be back in your ears. Sorry for the sort of out-of-the-blue nature of this episode, just appearing unannounced in the middle of nowhere. But that's how we be. That's how we're going to do. I mean, if we're going to be as busy as we are, as consistently as we are, then I'm going to squeeze out an episode whenever I am physically able to do so. And I'm sitting on 2 at the moment, at least. Today, we're going to be talking about the Ice Ultra, obviously. I've got another episode coming up, which in a week or so will come out, and that's a very, very special episode I'm extremely excited about. That's where we're going to be talking about the Barkley Marathons, and we're going to keep going after that, hopefully bringing out regular podcasts. But as I say, as and when we've got it, we're going to give it to you. We're going to be talking about the Ice Ultra today, and I can't wait to do that. This is a race that's very close to my heart because it's the multi-stage ultra that I have actually done. This is me talking about a race where I can feel like I'm speaking with a little bit of authority. I did this race as a competitor back in 2017, and now I'm going to get to talk to some people who've done it just this year. We don't really shout enough about our own adventures on this podcast. 85 episodes deep. I feel like we should have brought you this long ago, but we've been given the best possible reason to suddenly come at you with a podcast about the Ice Ultra, which is that finally, a Beyond the Ultimate Global Race Series event has been won overall by a female athlete, and we're incredibly excited by that. I wish it wasn't headline news. I wish that was a regular state of affairs on our events, but it hasn't been. And here we are. It's finally happened, and I don't know if it could have happened to a more deserving athlete. So we're going to get into that shortly. We have an interview with that very deserving athlete. We have an interview with the person who came second in the race, but we have a couple of new features as well. Given we're going to be talking about one of the BTU races, we've got race director Kris King to give you a little introduction to the Ice Ultra. I'm not going to talk you through his. He's going to talk you through the event overall. He's going to talk you through how this year's event went and how it compared to previous events. Then we're going to drop into our interview with Kristina and then Karl, and then at the end, continuing with the Ks, we've had Kristina, we've had Karl, and then we're going to have Kimble. Start of a new regular feature that I'm extremely excited about. At the end of the episode today, you will find our first Radness update from Adam Kimble. For those of you that don't know him, Adam Kimble is possibly the most delightful and enthusiastic human you will ever meet in your life. He's also an extremely talented professional ultra runner with some really strong FKTs under his belt. A couple of recent wins, so yeah, congratulations, Adam. Absolutely fantastic. And he's going to be here today to talk to us about the Barkley Marathons and get us excited for that next episode. So hang out towards the end of the episode for that. I know you're going to love it because I know I did. Now, without further ado or rambling from me, we're going to go straight into our race director update. So here's Kris King to tell you all about the Ice Ultra, what that race is, and how this year's event in February went.
Every year the Ice Ultra is different, and it's because basically Mother Nature decides what course we're going to take that year. Not only does it decide what lakes we're going to cross and how we're going to cross them, but if we can pass through the mountains that we have on our route of the first 2 days. So there's always some challenge thrown at the runners, whether that be low visibility and side winds and freezing conditions on the lakes, or whether that be mountainous Arctic conditions, which pose a number of other challenges and threats to the runners. So every year we kind of turn up and see what we might be expecting. And this year we knew that we were going to have a cold first day, It was going to be around the minus 25s, minus 30s, nothing close to the kind of record temperatures we've received on that race before of like minus 40, minus 45, but definitely enough of a cold temperature to give people a hard day of work. And then we also knew that day 2, which is a stage where the runners have to go over Mount Kabler, which is an exposed plateau, we knew that they'd have to work for it. We knew that it was within our parameters of comfort, but we knew that there would almost certainly be some people that unravel on that hill, because it is just so different to what anyone else, what these people would have experienced before, and it can be really scary and terrifying actually if you're in a position where you're already tired and confused. So we were really what we expected happened, in the fact that there was quite a high attrition rate in the first 2 days, especially on day 2 with the adverse weather conditions, and then it kind of leveled out. Day 3 and 4, the temperature warmed up a little bit, and the sun was out, and you could see that morale definitely picked up. I think that we did have a high attrition rate this year. Not as many people made it to the finish, and reasons for that were your typical things like hypothermia, frostbite, cold-related stuff, snow blindness. We did get all that, and this is from an experienced field as well, so it can happen to anyone. But I think that the success rate, the amount of people that got to the finish, actually was higher because of the morale and the kind of working relationship the runners had with each other, as well as being open and working with our team. So there was definitely a power of the pack going on, which often happens in our races, because obviously they're smaller fields than some of the massive events. So we had this kind of collective group helping each other to the finish, and that definitely helped a few people get there. At the front end of the pack, we of course had Kristina, who not only won the women's race but won the race overall, and she becomes our first woman in history to do so. So we've had some fantastic women on our races in the past. For those watching the video, on the screen behind me is actually Lenka, who give John Shield a good run for his money, and in any other year probably would have won the race outright as well. She won the female race that year. But yeah, Kristina just turned up, did the job, was strong and her usual self throughout. So records broken even in a tough year, and we were kind of working out how many years we'd been doing this race now. We're actually approaching on our 10th year, which is exciting, because it's come a long way, that race, in its time since we first turned up. So we've got a good bunch of people heading out next year. There's more information from our past runners on this race than ever before, so there's a lot of research to be had from those guys, and it's going to be another great year next year. It'll be the same controlled chaos as what you can expect in an Arctic environment, and I always love coming back from that race and just knowing that the people that have made it have worked exceptionally hard to get there, and the people that were unfortunate and didn't still had a good time and got to see a beautiful and extreme place that ordinarily that they wouldn't get chance to in the way that they did. So yeah, good feeling all around from this year's race.
Okay, so that was Kris King talking us through what the Ice Ultra is. Let's talk to the star of the show this week. We are about to speak to Kristina Madsen. Now, a couple of notes about Kristina first. She's a highly decorated ultra runner. She has run for her country. She has various world records under her belt. She's also got form with Beyond the Ultimate. Her first ever multi-stage race was our Jungle Ultra in Peru. She was the first woman over the line there. Last November, she came and did our desert race in Namibia. She was the first woman over the line there too. And she's just come back from running with us in Sweden and she was the first person over the line overall. At least the joint winner of all 5 of the stages, came out on top overall. We are exceptionally happy for her. Now, another note on Kristina is that as a consequence of her being as talented as she is, she's become kind of a big deal in her native country. Between TV appearances and her popping up on national news and national news programs, it's been really difficult for her to fit in an interview. So we decided to abandon the usual interview process. I sent her the questions that I had planned to base my interview on anyway, and she very kindly found herself a quiet 20 minutes or so and recorded all the answers herself. So without me interrupting and waffling like I usually do, here's Kristina Madsen to talk you through her Ice Ultra adventure in her own words.
So how did it feel to win the Ice Ultra? To win the Ice Ultra was an absolutely amazing and also overwhelming experience. I don't even have words for it. And like coming back to Denmark after the win, where the media has gone crazy, is overwhelming. But I am so happy. I'm very proud. And this also, gives me the confidence to dream even bigger. And it's very big to be able to inspire women out there to dream big. Okay, what were the hardest challenges in the Ice Ultra? So the hardest thing in the Ice Ultra was definitely the parts where the temperature dropped. So crossing some of the lakes, especially early in the morning, where you could really instantly feel the drops in temperature. That was really hard because you have to keep moving, but then again you can't run too fast, because if you start to sweat and your inner layer gets wet, then you might you can get into trouble later if you're wet, on the inner layer. So to find that balance where it's really important you don't move too slow and then start freezing, but you can't move too fast either. I think that was a hard balance, but day 2 on Mount Kepler was really tough. The temperature drop, the wind coming in, the visibility was it was actually hard to watch, to be able to see the signs, even though they were only 10 meters apart. That was maybe the hardest bit of the race. But on the other hand, I remember at one point I thought, how long can I keep going in this? Because my water froze. The wind was so crazy that I could not, stop to get extra gloves on. I couldn't put my down jacket on because, first of all, I didn't want to stop. But second of all, I was afraid that I'll lose my stuff in the wind. So I did think how long can I keep on going like this? But I also, at the same time, thought, this is so cool. This is exactly what I came for. This is so extreme, and this is why I do stuff like this. So that this is the test. This is the Ice Ultra. So I can say day 2 on Mount Kepler in the extreme weather and conditions was both the hardest thing about the Ice Ultra, but also my favorite part, if that makes sense. So did the race go accordingly to your plan, or did you have to change your plans? So my plan was to race hard from the beginning. My plan was to win the race, to be the fastest woman. So I knew I was going to run as fast as I could on day 1 and also day 2. And that, went according to my plan, and it went even better. So I was like very happy about that, and winning the first 2 stages, I could relax a bit more after that. So I ran with Karl Alvarez, also on day 2, but like the whole stages on stage 3 and 4 and 5. And I don't know if that was a change to my plan, but it was really nice to have company, because I often do some of these races by myself. Like I get to, how can I say that? I sometimes do these long distances by myself, so it was really nice to have Karl with me. And I was surprised on some of my equipment. Like I've tested my water bottles down to minus 30 degrees, and they worked well in like the freezer warehouse I was training in here in Denmark, but I found they froze quite quickly in Sweden. And that was, it is a problem when you can't drink when you would like to drink. So I tried like different stuff, putting some hand warmers outside the bottles. So some of the changes in my plans was actually due to my equipment. What do you think was the hardest, the jungle, desert, or ice? Yeah, so I've done the jungle, the desert, and now the ice ultra. And I can't, it's really hard to compare them because they are in different environments. I do find it very hard to run in the heat. Like plus 40 degrees, it is hard for me to run. So like the desert ultra, I've done the desert ultra twice now. And, every time it has been really, really tough. And, I must say, I think I enjoyed the ice ultra maybe the most. And I think my body performed well in the cold. So I didn't have like any crisis whatsoever on the ice. So I guess that made it maybe not so hard or tough as the others. Like the jungle ultra, which I did back in 2016, will always have a special place in my heart because that was my first multi-stage race. So I was like new in the business. I did not know what to expect, and it was awesome. Like the jungle ultra, and to run through the Amazon jungle was a life-changing experience for me. Like the terrain, like the people, the environment, the humidity, that was absolutely amazing. And I think, that must be my favorite one, the jungle. What training would you recommend that everybody signing up for the Ice Ultras should do? Well, I think to be able to do the Ice Ultra and to be able to enjoy as much as it as possible, you need to get the kilometers in. And I think it's really important to run them quite slow because you will be running slow on the ice. So to do like a long mileage throughout the week and like do them very slow so your body gets familiar with running slow. And then it is absolutely crucial to do some training in your snowshoes. And maybe if you don't have snows, you can do it on the beach with sand. And, to practice to get them on and off is also really important. Otherwise, you can quickly lose some some valuable minutes with putting them on and off. So yeah, long, slow kilometers. And if I kind of like ask myself, okay, I'm going to do a competition in really low temperatures, but here in Denmark through the winter times, it doesn't get that cold, or at least not this year. So I made a deal with a local freezer, like a warehouse freezer, where I could test my equipment and test my body and how it reacts in low temperatures. So I don't know if you have the possibility to train in low temperatures. I think you should definitely do that. But like, make sure to get the long, slow runs in. What kit was essential? So I had like a 2-layer system on the upper body. I had a thick merino wool like first layer. I had a merino wool bra on, a sports bra. And on top of that, I had a windproof and rainproof jacket from Nordisk Outdoor, a Danish brand. So that was actually the only 2 layers I had. I did also have an extra lightweight down jacket in my bag, but I never got to use it. And on the bottom, I just had 1 layer tights, like 1 layer winter tights, like a thick layer tights with some windshield on it as well from also the Danish brand New Line. And then I had 2 socks, merino wool socks, and my shoes were Hoka Speedgo shoes, where I put some extra spikes on them, and I made sure the spikes could also, fit in with the snowshoes on. And what was really important was to get my shoes in a size bigger, because then I could have, the 2 pair of merino wool socks in them. And there was also room for my feet, to swell a little bit, because, they do when you run long distances. Another thing I was really happy about was my thick merino wool buff. So one thing is you can have it around your neck, but when it gets really cold, you can take the buff like from your neck and on top of your head, and then it protects your cheeks. So your question was what kit was essential, and then I would actually say all of it, because it's really important you don't get to freeze. It's really important you don't get too hot. So, a jacket with a zipper, you can do up and down. A merino wool buff you can take on and off, and you can, cover your head with it. And I had a fleece hat from the British brand Voga. That was really warm. And of course you need some gloves. I had 2 gloves with me. The one thing I would have done differently was to get some other bottles. I had some insulated bottles, and, they froze so fast, and sometimes they froze so, like, I couldn't get the top off, so I couldn't feel in water. That was not good. Of course, the snowshoes were also essential, and I found out during my training that, how do I explain this? So I actually cut like a bit of the inner snowshoes off, because I felt I was like they hit each other when I ran. So I kind of like adjusted them so they fit me. Yeah. So your next question, will your training be different for the mountain ultra? Yeah, I am training towards the mountain ultra, and my training would definitely be different. I need to put in some elevation meters in my training, so I will get used to the climbing, but also the descents. And, you know, one of the challenges is we don't have any mountains in Denmark. Like our highest peak is 180 meters above sea level. And the funny thing is that little hill or mountain, as we call it in Denmark, is actually called Sky Mountain. That is our highest peak in Denmark. So I train there a lot, and, you know, I do hill reps up and down. So, you know, if you have a training where you do 1,000 meters of ascent, you have to run up and down the same hill quite many times. But that's how it works here. So if you want to be a good mountain runner in Denmark, you need to do hill reps. Another thing that I do when I train for mountain races is I go on my treadmill. So I have a treadmill in my garage from Techno Gym, and I can elevate the treadmill up to 18% of incline. You know, and the benefit about that, you know, you can talk about, oh, it's boring to run on the treadmill. But actually, the treadmill, you can just run or walk uphill as much as you like. So that is a good thing about having a treadmill, and also, you know, to train on a treadmill, because you can just keep on going up. I am considering to bring poles to the Mountain Ultra, but I need to study the course a little bit more, like how technical is it? How far are the inclines, etc. But if I do bring poles, I will also need to train with poles a little bit more. What is it that keeps you coming back to do such tough challenges? So I love to do the Beyond the Ultimate multi-stage races, and I love to do tough challenges. Because, you know, tough challenges for me gives me the opportunity to learn more about myself. I find it really interesting to, you know, be in a situation where like all the physical layers are gone, like you're highly physical present. So it's only like the raw you left. It's only like your mindset left, because there's not room for anything else. And that's a room like I find very interesting. Like, what mental strategies do you have when it's really, really tough? Like, how can you cope with like tough situations? Like, how do you deal if you make a wrong turn, or if you're really, really cold, or like you're really, really pressured? Like, how do you cope with that? What are your mental strategies? How can you like maybe turn a negative mindset into something like useful? So it's both like the mental side of doing these tough challenges, but also like the remote areas we race in, like the beautiful raw nature that we get to experience when we race in these tough conditions. Like, like, when will you ever visit the Swedish Lapland? When will you ever go into the Amazon jungle or the Namibian desert? It's just a great, great opportunity. Do you have more world records or FKTs planned for the future? So at the moment, I don't have any records planned. I am, you know, my next race is the Mountain Ultra in Kyrgyzstan, and I am fully focused on that. Later this year, I will focus a bit more on races in Denmark, but yeah, you'll never know. I'm sure I will find like a a record to try to get.
Congratulations against Kristina. Absolutely outstanding running. As she said a couple of times, though, she wasn't alone all the time out there. There was one runner on the field who seemed to be able to just about keep pace with her over the last 3 days. And that runner was Karl Alvarez. We're going to be talking to him very shortly. But Karl hasn't just done exceptionally well at the Ice Ultra. Karl is about to do something incredible. He's already done a couple of races with BTU. He's just done the Ice Ultra. He's coming back in July to meet us in Kyrgyzstan and do the Mountain Ultra out there as well, looking to complete the entire Global Race Series as well as the Foranges Ultra. So this Ice Ultra success that he's just had is just part of a longer process. So we're going to talk to Karl not just about that race, but about how it fits into his grand plans. Karl, how are you? Have you thawed out a little since I last saw you?
Good morning, Will. Yes, I have. I'm fully recovered and now completely focused in getting back to training and focusing on the next race.
Amazing. Yeah, sorry to lead straight in there with the most obvious dad joke I could have made about having last seen you in the Arctic, but yeah, this there's no rest for you, is there? You're going straight in. So your next race with us, I believe, is the Jungle Ultra in June?
Yep, that's correct. The next one's in June, followed very shortly after by the Mountain in July. So I'm a bit nervous about the little bit of time between the two races, but hey.
Oh, you know what? This isn't quite sticking to my list of questions or anything, but while you've brought it up, do you have any thoughts about how you can maybe prepare yourself for that? Is there anything you're doing in training to try and help you with this transition period from doing the jungle in June and then straight onto climbing Everest with us in the mountains in Kyrgyzstan? Not Everest, literally.
I think that although the environments are very different, there are some similarities with the terrain. There's the altitude aspect. You know, when we start the race in Peru, we're already at altitude, so there's that factor. And I think the terrain is very up and down in the jungle as it is on the mountain. So I think that the training for both races is going to complement both of them. I think it's just going to be a case of how I deal with the recovery from one race to the other. And I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to prepare for that. I think a lot of it is going to have to be sort of mental preparation, and maybe decide which race I want to try and perform better in, and leave the other one as just getting through.
Well, that raises an interesting point because, you know, your sort of overall aim here was to complete the whole GRS series, to do the Global Race Series. I believe you were aiming for within a year originally. Of course, at that point, we didn't have the Mountain Ultra set up. So you took the Foranges Ultra in there as well. So you're going to come out of this experience having done the whole Global Race Series plus the Foranges Ultra. And you don't seem to have held back in those races. Like, you just came in second in the Ice Ultra and were toe-to-toe with Kristina for the last 3 days. So I don't sense you holding back on any of these. So do you think you will with the other races? Is it more important to you to sort of individually do well in each one, or to just get this thing in the bag?
That is a bit of a tough question. I think when I first signed up to these races, so if we take a step back to when I signed up to them initially, you don't sign up to one of these races, or generally people don't sign up to these races 1-2 months before the starting line. You know, a lot of planning, preparation, thought process goes into it. So when I signed up, it was at the height of COVID. And the reasons for me doing these races was I really felt that I just needed something for me. I needed a goal to work towards, because that's generally how I function. And I lost a bit of that during sort of the COVID and lockdown period. So I signed up to the series, not really being a runner, if I'm perfectly honest. definitely been someone who's very, fitness enthusiast. I'm also a doctor, so how the body functions like really fascinates me, and what the body's capable of really interests me. So when I signed up to them, I really just wanted to complete. However, I am very aware of my competitive nature. So I think in each race, I'm going to want to compete with myself, to push myself. I don't think there's any point in doing a race like this and coming out of it, feeling, very comfortable and feeling that you could have put in more, because I'm unlikely to ever be in this position again, where I put myself out there to complete the entire series in the space of a year. So I will definitely push myself as much as I can in every race. But there are risks involved with that. And I've learnt that as I've gone along. Prior to this series, I'd only ever signed up to one multi-stage ultramarathon before, or any ultramarathon before, and that was the MDS, and that was 7 years earlier, 2015. Okay. So in 2022, at the starting line for Rangers Ultra, I clearly overcooked it because I went way too hard days 1 and 2, and I paid for that later on. I learned so much about my body, about, what foods are good, like on an ultra race, what works for me, what doesn't. And in each race, all I've aimed to do is to improve on how I did in the previous one. And it's worked.
Yeah, well, it seems to have. I mean, I remember Kenya. That was, you had some practice there for the heat, not quite as blistering as in the desert, but you obviously learned some lessons between the two. And I've come here today loosely to talk to you about the ice ultra, but let's touch on the desert for a minute. I mean, how did that race go for you? Because that's dad joke again, unintentional this time. Poles apart from the Arctic race you've just done. So how was the desert experience?
I mean, each race is so challenging and so special in its own way. The desert is just an amazing place. It is so extreme. That heat is just, you can't escape it. It's there all the time. Even when you're in the shade, you feel it. And what it does to your physiology is also just amazing. You lose so much salt, you're salt depleted, you're thirsty, like you can't get enough nutrition in, your stomach closes off and you can't actually physically eat. It's just amazing that with training, you can overcome all of those sort of barriers, and to see, for me to cross the finish line in that race and to see the others do it as well. It is an amazing race. And then to go from that and just 2 months later, go from, 40 plus degrees Celsius to minus 40, that was a very interesting transition.
Yeah, I can imagine it was, because I mean, I've obviously been to both a few times now, and I know exactly what you mean about that oppressive heat, just constant presence, no matter where you are. The best you can do is sort of sit still in the shade for a little while and hope you cool down a bit, and then boom, you're in the middle of the actual Arctic, and we are now in incredibly cold temperatures, and you guys had a full range. I mean, I've seen a big swing in temperature on that race before, but if you think about stage 2 up on Mount Kabler, that howling wind and how low the temperatures got there. I mean, I heard people reporting minus 40s, minus 45s. And then later in the week, we were getting to a point where the sun was up. It felt almost mild. We had barely freezing temperatures. So even within that race itself, you experienced like a 40-degree swing. So that's an extra level of complication again. And part of the reason why I came to view the Ice Ultra as being almost as much about your ability to manage your admin as your ability to run the race. And I mean, is that what you found out there?
Absolutely. And I think that all of these races are about that. They're about so much more than just the running. You need to make sure that you have the right kit. You need to be able to pace yourself. You need to be able to look after yourself. You need to identify when things are going wrong early and address them immediately. Because or else you'll just pay the price. And I think that that's when people start to unfortunately drop out. But with the right training, with the right mindset, with the right equipment, and being sensible, these races aren't beyond the realm of anyone. And our bodies are designed to be able to survive and to deal with these environments. Like, one thing that really struck home, and it was the biggest marker for me of the difference between the ice, the desert, and how our bodies adapt. So when we were in the desert and we were running, like, when you're actually running, yes, it's hot, but your body has this ability to cool itself. And you realize how good it is at doing that when you actually take a sip of water and it's like tea.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't actually feel like my water feels. You then fast forward 2 months and I'm running in -40, and my body in many ways felt just as comfortable in that -40 as it did in the +40. Yeah, a little bit of discomfort, admittedly, but it was adapting. Yet my water was now frozen. And I didn't feel like that water, but it just goes to show. So
that's amazing. I hadn't quite thought of it in that way, in terms of like how well the human body can maintain its what there's a word, homeostasis.
Homeostasis, absolutely. And this is one of the main drivers behind me doing these races, because I like pushing my own limits and learning about what our bodies are capable of. And with each of these races, I'm more and more amazed and fascinated and interested. So yeah.
That's amazing. And a fairly unique viewpoint. Like, I really enjoyed how genuinely excited you look by that, because that's me geeking out over anything what I've just seen in your face. That is incredibly fascinating. Over the course of the next 12 months, this isn't just you as a runner going through a journey. This is you as a doctor experimenting on your own body in extreme environments for a year. I mean, what an amazing opportunity. So are you outside of the sort of ultra running we're talking about, are you learning a lot on that side of things as you go through?
Yeah, absolutely. And not just the physical aspect, but also the psychological aspect, what it takes to push yourself when you've been running for 70 kilometers and you still have another 20 to go, those like really long stages, being able to pick yourself up after one day and go again the next, despite the pain, despite the sort of misery and the discomfort. Pushing myself to limits that I didn't think I had. I really felt that certainly in the first 2 races, the Kenya and the desert, where I was still sort of finding myself. On the ice, for me, things seem to work out better, but that's because I've been learning, and I've spoken to Kris King, who's given me lots of advice, and I've spoken to lots of ultra runners that I've had the privilege to run with on these races, and taking like little bits of like useful information and like bits of advice and choosing what works for me and what doesn't.
Wow. Perfect. Mm-hmm. And that's, you're going into a lot of detail there with your medical background, but that's the sort of journey that we're asking everyone to go on with these races. There's so much more to it than just getting your legs strong and turning up. Like there's a lot you need to learn about the environment before you get there. So, you've obviously done your planning and you're reflecting on each race as you go and learning from it, which is just perfect. So what have we taken from the ice? Are there any particular lessons that the ice taught you? And also, did you go in with a plan and did that plan work, or did you have to improvise and change some things along the way?
Yeah, so I think that the ice was the race that posed the most unknowns to me. So when I prepare for all of these races, that I always think that there are three things that I look at. There's the physical aspect. So, since that first race in Kenya, I've just maintained the physical fitness. It's putting in the mileage. I've got a training program-ish that works for me, and I'm fit, and I know that I can complete the mileage. Then there's the psychological aspect. And I think that with each race, I've grown psychologically stronger, and the first race, I wasn't used to doing those extra long distances. Now I am a bit more. So I'm happy with that. But the third component is, your kit and the environment. And being from Gibraltar, the heat, humidity, I'm able to cater for that, even the terrain, but I wasn't able to do that for the ice. So there were many unknowns there. I wasn't able to test any of my equipment. So I overcame that by going out to sort of northern Sweden, Swedish Lapland, a week before the start of the race. And that for me was invaluable. I had the opportunity to test out all of my kit, and the fact that it was a week before, fair enough. I knew that my fitness wasn't going to suffer that much in the space of a week, but I was able to test everything. So at the start of the race, I knew that everything was going to work. That said, the temperature did markedly drop from the week that I was there to the start of the race. So I was still a little bit nervous. But even at -40, Will, I was running in 2 layers on top and 1 layer on the bottom. And this is again another example of how well our bodies adapt. Had I stopped, I would have been in trouble.
Yeah.
But if you keep moving, and it just worked. It worked so well. And being able to run with Kristina was a privilege to be there. And I think we pushed each other.
I was coming to that. You preempted one of my later questions. It was impossible to tell from the outside whether you two were fighting each other all the way or, it just both having a great race and enjoying the company. We weren't sure whether to portray this as a battle royale going on the ice or just two runners having a dream of a week and enjoying the experience.
I think there was a mixture of both, to be honest. Yeah. She took the advantage in the first couple of days of the race. So in day one, I was still finding my feet. She went out with something to prove, and she's got so much experience, so many miles, so many races under her belt that she could afford to do that. I was certainly still finding my feet. So by the end of day one, I knew that I had to finish day one and feel comfortable. If I was going to stand a chance for the rest of the race. Day two, we started out together, but on the mountain, when we did have those, gale force winds and that -40 temperature, I didn't, because the conditions that day, they changed like that. It was one moment, it was all, fine and dandy, and the next, it was just, this torrential weather.
Oh yeah, we sent you out that morning thinking you were going to have a lovely day. But
and so because of that, I had my goggles in my bag, my sunglasses in my bag, and when we hit the mountain, I'm like, I can't stop to get those out. If I do, I'll freeze. So I had to keep moving, and I had my hat over my eyes, my buff up over my eyes. I just knew that I had to keep moving those 8K between the checkpoints. And when I got to the checkpoint, my eye was really sore. I was battered. And at that point, Kristina just said, "See you later."
Have a good day.
And whereas I just had to sit down, have 10 minutes with myself, and like people who were in that at that station will tell you that I looked awful. But after 10 minutes, I was able to get myself together, get out of the tent, and keep moving at my pace. The medics were fantastic. They looked after my eye overnight, and I was able to keep running day 3. And by then, I'd found my feet. I felt really good, and me and Kristina were able to run, push each other. She wasn't really racing, I guess, because unless I would have got that advantage that she had over me, which was about half an hour, then she had no need to. But we still pushed each other, and as a result, we actually had a really enjoyable race.
I mean, you could tell you were still pushing. You were still coming in with a massive gap between you and third place each day. You could both have taken a foot significantly off the gas and still held your positions on the board, but both of you kept pressing forwards, and I love to see that. Yeah, I sense that. So, just paint a picture for me for a second, because we keep going back. Everyone I'm speaking to who was out there in the Arctic this year, we keep going back to Mount Kabler and what I started referring to in the social media coverage as the Battle of Kabler. It got pretty bad up there, right? Properly Arctic. Can you just paint us a picture of when it was at its most harsh up there?
Yeah. So as I said, the conditions changed so quickly. And as we were going over that mountain, I was the first one over. So Kristina at that point was just slightly behind me. And because I was the first and, there was no one like stopping us, I thought, well, this is what we signed up for. This is why I'm here. And it was really extreme, to the point where I had to do a sanity check at one point, where I was concerned. There was, you're a little bit scared if you haven't been in that sort of environment before. The wind is really strong. You almost feel it like pushing you off your feet. You're following the course markings, but there were points where you were at one course marking and you couldn't see the next,
which is a horrible feeling. I've been there, up there as well.
And at that point, I did have to sort of have a moment and think, right, I could feel sort of a degree of sort of worry and panic sort of building up. And you just need to think, well, okay, actually, my hands feel good, my legs feel good, my core feels good, my eye's a bit sore, but I can push on. And that's what I did. I prepared for that mentally. And at those points when you just stood there and you can't see the next marking, it was a case of just let some snow blow and all of a sudden you can sort of catch a glimpse of the next marking. There we go. And you just take it one marking at a time, one foot in front of the other at a time until you get...
It's like a stopwatch going in your ear, right? You're standing there at one marking, waiting for a gap in the snow to let you know where the other one is. And the whole time you can feel your temperature dropping, and whatever, sweat might be on your body is now starting to cool. And, I need to see this marker soon. I need to see this marker soon. And then it pops up and you get to go again and then do that whole anxiety loop over and over again. This is where your resilience comes into play.
Absolutely. And we were moving fast, Kristina and I, and the visibility was rubbish, but it wasn't long before you could see that next marking. It was just a case, keep it moving, keep going, and there's a huge sense of achievement when you get over that. It was extreme. It was what we signed up for. It was what we wanted. As always, Beyond the Ultimate delivered. And apart from, my favorite day, many people say that day 2, despite how extreme it was their favorite day. For me, it was day 3, that marathon distance, and the sky was perfectly blue and the scenery was just so beautiful. From the start to the finish of that stage, it was stunning. And if it had not been for this race, it's a part of the world that I would never have otherwise visited. And I'm so glad that I've done this race just for that reason, because I do think that I'll go back there. That's the case with all of these BTU races. It takes you to, parts of the world that you'd otherwise never go to and you'd miss out on.
And, as you get closer to Jokkmokk towards the end of that race, you see the occasional person out on like a dog sled tour of the area. And you might, as a tourist, be able to see it briefly like that. But to be standing, having got there yourself on your own 2 feet in the middle of these frozen lakes, which, on stage 3, so some of them take hours to cross.
Yeah.
And I've never felt anything like that. Just being a dot in the middle of that beautiful, beautiful scenery. In a place that you got to yourself is totally different. Yeah,
there's lakes, they just go on forever. So it is like, for some people, that can be like mind crushing. But if you just take it in and absorb it all and just enjoy being in that moment, that was really, really special.
Amazing. I'm really looking forward to seeing you on the next couple of races as well, because I'm loving how excited you are getting about it. And that's how I feel about these races. This is why I keep coming back and doing it. I love seeing these places. I love seeing people experience these things, and it changes your view of what you can do completely. And you are getting 5 doses of that in 12 months. I can only imagine what a sort of lift that is for you on a day-to-day basis.
It's going to be a massive downer when I finish.
Well, we'll have to find you something else to do instead.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I think it's doing these races. It changes who you are in many respects. So yeah, I will. I guess I don't even want to think about finishing just yet.
Oh yeah, let's not skip ahead. I'm already planning booking you in for another podcast episode once you finish the mountain, mate. So we'll save that for another time. So, I'm just having a quick look through the questions that I prepared, but you've been really thorough and kind of talked your way through a lot of this already. Okay. So you've been through the process a few times now. In quite a short space of time, you have prepared for and successfully completed 5-day stage races. If somebody's listening to this because they've signed up for the Ice Ultra next year, or they're thinking about it, or they've just got some other massive cold challenge out there in mind, are there any tips you'd give them? Anything you did in your training that definitely paid off out there, or anything maybe you didn't do that you wish you had, having been out there?
I think it's all a case of preparation, and I've spoken about what works for me, compartmentalizing, what you need to do to prepare. So you need to be physically fit, you need to be mentally fit, and you need to have your kit. And the kit is important, even if you live somewhere where you can't actually test all of your equipment, there are still things that you can do to test it. You can wear it in the heat, that's fine. You can do like Kristina did and find some industrial sized freezers. They do exist. And if you approach them, they'd probably let you go in just because it's so crazy. Testing all of your food is really, really important. So put anything that you're thinking about taking in the freezer, and testing that.
What was your go-to snack quickly before we move on?
So we the best decision was flapjack.
Oh,
yeah, I didn't think it would work that well, but oh my god! I have a distinct memory of me, like when I was really suffering after the mountain with my eye and I was like really tired, those 10 minutes that I took to regroup was spent eating a flapjack. I ate half, put it back in the bag, and then I distinctly remember asking one of the medics, I'm like, can you just get that other half back out?
Yeah. Brilliant. There you go. There's a tip. Flapjack can change your life.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it. And just, just think about everything, every scenario, like go through it in your head. And that way things won't go wrong. The less you leave to chance, the better.
Yeah. How about snowshoes? Had you tried your snowshoes before you arrived in Sweden, or did you try them for the first time during that extra week you bolted on? Yeah,
that was one of the things that I aim to do. For people who are thinking of doing this race, you definitely need to spend some time in your snowshoes before the start of the race. Just wearing them for 10 minutes on sand just won't cut the mustard, because they might start slipping out. So I had to make like little adjustments to them. No matter what I did, it kept coming out the back of my heel. So I actually had to, I had a little clip that went from my shoe to the back strap of the snowshoe, and that worked really well. I practiced putting them on and off with gloves. I actually ended up timing myself. I went out for like a 5K run one day before the start of the race. And the way I did it was like every couple of 100 meters, take them off, put them on my bag, run a bit, take them off my bag, put them back on. And that was an important process. And like day one, when I overtook, was it Rob, I believe?
Yeah.
I overtook him because he was faffing with his snowshoes, and I then put mine on immediately after him, but I was used to putting them on and off. So like little things like that, particularly if you want to race and do a good time, they're important. But even if you want to have a comfortable time, you need to know that when you wear them, they're going to stay on. So yeah, don't leave anything to chance.
I think sound advice. And it's sound advice probably for us to sort of leave this on as well. I've really enjoyed the chat this morning. I didn't intend to have this part of the episode be quite as long, but I just really enjoyed seeing how enthusiastic you were about this whole process. And I mean, I can't wait to see you smash your way through Peru and Kyrgyzstan as well. So fingers crossed for that. But the big thing, and I should really have opened with this, is congratulations. Second in the Ice Ultra, toe-to-toe with Kristina all the way through the last 3 days. I mean, you did immensely well to say that was the environment that you said earlier you felt probably least prepared for, that had the most question marks over it. So yeah, that's got to feel good at this point, that you've acquitted yourself so well in an environment that you weren't maybe 100% sure of. Does that give you a bit more confidence for the others?
Absolutely. I think that, it was the hurdle I really just wanted to get over, because now, I don't, I feel like nothing can stop me. I don't want to, I don't want to curse myself, but I think that now it's just a case of getting the other two done, and I'm really looking forward to them.
And I realised I missed a question at the start, and I want to loop back to it for a second. I know that some people look at these races and think, oh, these guys must be elites. They must have been in this ultra running game for years. But I caught you say earlier on that aside from the MDS, this wasn't really your area. So what was your sporting background, and how did you make the switch over here?
Yeah, so I tend to consider myself a jack of all trades and a master of none. So when I was younger, I was a rower, and I took that very, very seriously. But I soon learned that I don't really enjoy just putting all of my efforts into one thing. I'm certainly someone who likes to experience lots of different sports. And since then, I'm a rock climber, I'm a skydiver, I paramotor. I do lots of different sports. And I think I like to do more thrill-seeking, more extreme things, which is why I always actually hated running. I guess I just wanted to overcome that. So I'm like, well, if you hate running, well, now you're going to do the longest race. Like, what are the longest races there are? So that's more my mentality, and it's just trying different things. I'm the same with the rest of my life. I think that's the reason I'm a GP by background, as opposed to any type of hospital specialist. So yeah, and you certainly don't need to be an elite athlete to do these races. You just need to have the determination, the commitment, the right mentality, the right drive. And you see that across the starting line in all of these races, and in many ways, I think it's more of a challenge, for those who, and I'm always more impressed and fascinated by the people who do it slow than the people who do it fast. Because to be out there on the track, from 8 a.m, 7 a.m, and then they come in 7, 8 at night, and then they get up and do it again the next day. It's amazing. And again, just testament to what we're able to do and what we're able to achieve.
Amazing. Right, that's the note we're going to leave this on. That's perfect.
Thanks, Will.
Anyone can achieve anything, guys. Karl Alvarez said it. All right. Well, Karl, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you this morning. I really appreciate you taking the time, and yeah, I meant what I said. I look forward to seeing how the next couple of events go. So have a good day, buddy, and thank you very much.
You too, mate. Lovely seeing you. I'll see you soon. I'll see you in June.
Okay, congratulations again, Karl. Can't wait to see you in Kyrgyzstan. That's going to be amazing. Now, as promised, a feature that I've very much been looking forward to. As I said right at the beginning, I'm already part of the way through putting together our next episode, and I cannot wait for you to hear it. If anyone listening to this happens to have been one of the people who follows me on Twitter, you'll have witnessed me go about 60 hours without sleep, constantly refreshing Keith Dunn's feed in Twitter. I am absolutely obsessed with the Barkley Marathons. I have been ever since I found out that it was a thing. There is somebody else who I know, the other race director within Beyond the Ultimate, the amazing Adam Kimble, who is equally enthusiastic about the Barkley Marathon. So as a means of getting you guys excited about that upcoming episode, and I promise you, there are some amazing guests in this episode that we've got coming up. We have Adam Kimble with his first regular Radness update to talk us through the just incredible amount of records that were set over the course of the Barkley Marathons this year, and some of the numbers around that race that just make it so mind-blowing. So I'm going to leave you this episode in Adam's capable hands. He will lead us out of the episode, and he's going to get us excited about the next episode that's going to come out. Can't wait for you guys to hear it. Thanks for sticking with us today. Over to you, Adam Kimble.
Hello, everybody. This is BTU Race Director Adam Kimble coming to you live from Northern California, Lake Tahoe. And I have so many things on my mind right now, and I don't really know where to start, so I'm just going to jump right in. If anybody was following the Barkley Marathons the past few days, there has been a lot of really interesting, unique things that have happened, records that have been set. And I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm going to start by saying that I'm going to rattle off so many numbers and things here that I may get something inaccurate, and apologies in advance if that is the case. But let us jump right in. So for the first time since 2017, there was a finisher of the Barkley Marathons, and not just one, not two, but three. Aurelian Sanchez finished in 58 hours, 23 minutes, and 12 seconds. John Kelly finished in 58 hours, 42 minutes, and 23 seconds. And Karel Sabi finished in 59 hours, 53 minutes, and 33 seconds. Now, that is tied for the record. There was one other year, 2012, where there were 3 finishers of the Barkley Marathons, and that's only the second time that that's ever happened. And keep in mind, since 2017, every edition of the race has not had a single finisher. So it's been 6 years since we've even seen a finisher, and then we've got 3 this year. Interestingly, Karel's time is the slowest finish of all time. The course cutoff for all 5 loops, if you finish the race, is 60 hours. And so he was about 7 minutes away from that cutoff. And so there have been several other 59 plus hour finishes in the race's history, but he has now the official slowest time, which is pretty cool. John Kelly is now in rare air. I mean, he already was by being just a finisher of the race, but especially rare air because he is now one of 3 people to have ever finished this race more than one time. So Brett Maughan finished twice, 2011 and 2012. Jared Campbell has finished 3 times, 2012, 2014, and 2016. So he has the record at 3 finishes, and now John Kelly has finished in 2017 and 2023. And I'm guessing John is going to have interest in going after Jared's record of 3, although Jared was there again this year. He just didn't get the finish this time. So really, really interesting stuff off the top. Okay, so let's dive into a few other things. So there were some other records that had never happened before. There were 4 runners that went out on a 5th loop, so the 5th and final loop of the Barkley. For the first time ever, 4 runners went out. That 4th runner that didn't finish was Damian Hall. Had an amazing performance in his Virgin Barkley experience, first time that he was at the race. Pretty incredible. It was also the first time that 6 runners went out on loop 4, another record for the race. And now keep in mind, the Barkley Marathons has a track record of seemingly getting tougher every year because Laz, the race director, seems to do everything he can to make it impossible for people to finish. However, one of the things that is a regular offender in terms of making it that much harder is the weather. And this year, I wasn't there myself, but just based off of the reports that I was receiving, it seemed like the weather was pretty clear and pretty good for most of the race, at least for Frozen Head State Park in Tennessee. I think a lot of times it can be a lot rainier, foggier, those kind of things, and be a lot more difficult. So this time the runners had that on their side at the very least, and I think it paid off in terms of how well some of these runners did. Okay, so 6 runners went out on loop 4. One of those 6 runners was Jasmine Paris, who became only the 2nd woman ever to go out on a 4th loop. She did not finish that 4th loop, but she's now one of 2 women. Her and Sue Johnston in 2001 are the only 2 women to have completed the fun run, which is 3 laps and 3 loops, and then gone out on their 4th. So a woman still has not finished 4 or more loops at Barkley, but it seems like Jasmine is tapping on that door, which is really exciting and really cool. To the note about the fun run, I think the number was 11, but there were 11 fun run finishers this year, another record by a long shot. I don't know what the previous record was, but 11 blew that out of the water. So 11 different runners finished 3 loops at the Barkley Marathons, which is absolutely incredible. And that has to be done within 40 hours to get credited with the fun run. If you're trying to go out on the 4th loop, you have to finish loop 3 within 36 hours. But if you do not finish within 36 and you finish within 40, you're still credited with the fun run. Okay, I think that was all of the stats that I had. Absolutely incredible stuff. The last thing I wanted to mention was the first finisher of this race, Aurelian Sanchez. There was a report from Keith Dunn, who is the sole live stream coverage person of the race. He just posts Twitter updates, which is perfectly in line with what the Barkley stands for. There's one person posting updates on a race that a lot of people are following, and it's pretty cool. But anyway, Keith said that Aurelian came to tear the page out of his final book, and there was a hiker who believed that the race was over that collected the book and brought it back to the finish line. So Aurelian came into the finish line without one of the pages that he needed to finish, presumably thinking that he was going to be DQ'd or maybe not be credited with a finish. I don't know. But anyway, the book was waiting for him at the finish line because this hiker had collected it. So I'm sure that was an enormous weight off his shoulders to both get that page, finish the race, and be the first finisher of this year's Barkley Marathon. So absolutely incredible stuff. There's so much more to be said, but I just had to say those things right now. And for everyone else that followed along, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.